The moment the groom said, "I can't do this. You're too poor," you could hear the air leave the room. $1,000 string quartet kept playing as if they could drown out the humiliation, but it was too late. Emma Brooks was just publicly dumped at the altar like a bad investment. In front of 100 guests. In her second-hand wedding dress. For daring to be a kindergarten teacher from Queens. But just when the silence became unbearable, the church doors exploded open. And in walked a man no one expected, a silver-haired billionaire in a suit that cost more than her annual salary. He didn't blink. He didn't ask permission. He walked straight down the aisle, stared into her eyes, and said, "I'm her father." What followed was something out of a movie, secrets buried for decades, a betrayal orchestrated from boardrooms and bedrooms alike, and a plan so twisted it made her entire engagement feel like a setup. This isn't a story about romance. It's a story about legacy, deception, and the woman who turned the humiliation of a ruined wedding into the most powerful comeback no one saw coming. Because she wasn't too poor. She was too priceless to be used. Before the wedding, before the betrayal, before the billionaire father stepped out of the shadows, Emma Brooks was just a kindergarten teacher with chalk under her nails and a heart full of hope. Her life was simple, but never small. Every morning, she woke up before the sun in her tiny apartment above a bodega in Queens. She'd brew her dollar store coffee, eat oatmeal with half a banana, and review lesson plans while folding laundry. Her living room doubled as a classroom supply closet, packed with crayons, glue sticks, and glitter she paid for out of her own paycheck. On the wall, stuck with tape that kept peeling in the winter, hung crayon drawings from her students. "Ms. Brooks is the best," written in wobbly, oversized letters. That was Emma's world, pure, purposeful, and painfully unglamorous. She didn't have designer bags or luxury skincare routines. What she had was love, the kind she poured into every child who needed more than a lesson, every parent who needed reassurance, every coworker who needed a hug and a laugh. Still, somewhere deep down, Emma dreamed. Not of castles or yachts, but of a partner. Someone who would see her value beyond her paycheck. Someone who didn't measure success in square footage or tax brackets. She wanted slow Sunday mornings. Honest conversations. A life built together, not bought. So when Chase Dalton, the charismatic real estate developer with perfect teeth and a six-figure watch, asked her out after a volunteer event at the community center, she thought maybe, just maybe, this was her against all odds moment. He brought her flowers. Remembered her favorite diner. Even sat on the floor of her classroom to help cut out paper stars for her students' holiday play. She thought he saw her. Not just the teacher, but the woman behind the lesson plans, the daughter who helped her single mom through chemo, the friend who never missed a birthday, the girl who'd never been anyone's first choice until now. She met his friends, his colleagues, even his mother, the icy, elegant Veronica Dalton who gave Emma a smile that never reached her eyes and said, "It's nice to meet someone so grounded." Emma knew what that meant. Knew the kind of circles she was stepping into. But she held on to Chase's words, "None of that matters. I love you, not your bank account." So she dared to believe. She bought a wedding dress on sale, altered it herself, and planned a wedding that was far more his world than hers. She let herself imagine a future where her last name changed but her values didn't. Where love, finally, won. She had no idea she was walking straight into a setup. She had no clue the man she was going to marry was hiding something. And she certainly didn't know that the life she'd fought to build for herself was about to collide with a legacy far bigger than she ever imagined. Emma's mom, Diane, was the first to notice something didn't feel right. And she didn't hide it. "I know he's charming," Diane said one night over tea in their tiny kitchen, "but sweetheart, people like Chase don't just fall head over heels for kindergarten teachers without some kind of angle." Emma rolled her eyes but didn't argue. Her mother wasn't trying to be mean, she was trying to protect her. Diane had raised Emma on her own after Emma's father vanished when she was a toddler. No child support. No calls. Just silence and debt. Diane worked 2 jobs to keep the lights on, sacrificed sleep so Emma could go to a good school, skipped meals so Emma never had to. She knew what it meant to survive. She also knew what it looked like when people used charm to hide ambition. I'm just saying, Diane continued, men like that, they grow up in penthouses. They don't marry women who clip coupons and make construction paper crowns for a living. But Emma, ever the optimist, brushed it off. Chase isn't like that, she insisted. He brings me coffee before work. He listens. He loves me. Her best friend, Layla, wasn't so convinced either. Layla had seen the early days of the relationship, when it was just movie nights and park strolls. But once the wedding planning started, and Chase's family got involved, Layla noticed the shift. You're not imagining this, Layla whispered one night, catching Emma backstage at the school's holiday play. They treat you like you're their community service project. Emma froze. She didn't want to believe it. But the image of Chase's mother, Veronica, flashed in her mind, her brittle smile, her overly loud compliments on Emma's humble roots and natural, unpolished beauty. At their engagement party, Veronica had raised a glass and toasted to Emma, who reminds us all that love truly knows no social class. It stung. Like being publicly applauded for surviving a flood while everyone else stood dry and safe on higher ground. Worse, Emma noticed how Chase would change when they were with his family. He'd laugh too loud at their jokes about public school people, pretend not to hear when they made snide comments about her thrift store shoes or her budget-friendly apartment. And yet, when it was just the two of them, he was soft. Kind. Attentive. Emma clung to that version of him. The version who helped her repaint her classroom. The one who cried when she showed him drawings from her students who thought he was Prince Charming. But deep inside, a voice had started to whisper, he doesn't defend you when it counts. And that voice grew louder the closer the wedding got. Every fitting, every family dinner, every veiled insult wrapped in a smile, it all chipped away at her belief that love could be enough to bridge two worlds so far apart. Diane saw it. Layla warned her. But Emma, with her heart full of faith and a future she wanted to believe in, stayed the course. Until the altar made the truth impossible to ignore. The church was breathtaking, vaulted ceilings, marble floors, cascading white orchids on every pew. Chase's family had spared no expense. And Emma? She'd walked down that aisle like it was the bridge between two lives, one she had built from love and grit, and one she hoped would be built together. But the moment she reached the altar, something shifted. Chase wouldn't look at her. His jaw was tight, his hands fidgeting. He glanced at the front row, where Veronica Dalton sat upright, her lips pinched like she smelled something sour. Emma's mother clutched her bouquet nervously, sensing the storm before it broke. The minister began. Dearly beloved, we are gathered here today to... I need to say something, Chase cut in. There was a pause. A collective breath held. The minister blinked. Perhaps, after the ceremony? Chase shook his head and finally looked at Emma. But his eyes were cold. Detached. Like the man she knew had stepped out of his own body. I can't do this, he said, loud enough for everyone to hear. I thought I could, but we come from different worlds. A gasp echoed through the cathedral. Emma blinked, confused. What are you talking about? He took a step back. This marriage, it's a mistake. You don't understand my world. My lifestyle. You never will. His words slammed into her like a truck. Not whispered. Not explained. Just spoken, crisp and cruel, in front of family, friends, coworkers, and strangers. You're too poor, Emma. And I can't pretend that doesn't matter anymore. The room tilted. Some people gasped. Others stood in stunned silence. Someone near the back let out a whispered, "Oh my God." Emma stood frozen, tears stinging but refusing to fall. Her dream day, the one she had poured her soul into, was crumbling right there in real time. Not in private. Not gently. But as a public spectacle of humiliation. Veronica, in the front row, didn't even flinch. In fact, a small satisfied smirk curled at the corner of her mouth. Emma's heart raced. Her chest felt like it would cave in. "We had plans," she said quietly, voice shaking. "You told me none of this mattered." "I told myself that too," Chase replied, stepping away from the altar. "But I was wrong." And then, he turned his back and walked. Just like that. As the sound of his shoes echoed down the marble aisle, guests began to murmur, shifting uncomfortably, whispering behind their programs. Layla rushed toward Emma, but Emma couldn't hear anything. The only sound was a high-pitched ring of shock and shame. She wanted to scream. To run. To disappear. But then, something even more unbelievable happened. The church doors blew open with a loud creak. Heads turned. And a tall man in a navy suit stepped through the threshold, flanked by two men in earpieces. The moment froze. The man locked eyes with Emma. His voice was low, steady, but it traveled through the silence like thunder. "Hello, daughter," he said. "It looks like I made it just in time." The heavy oak doors swung open with a force that silenced the murmurs. Every head turned. Standing in the doorway was a tall, silver-haired man in an immaculate navy suit, framed by sunlight that poured in like divine timing. He walked with a presence that didn't need to announce itself, but did anyway. Flanking him were two suited men with discreet earpieces and eyes that scanned the room with military precision. Emma barely had time to process what was happening. And then he said it. "Hello, daughter," the man declared, his deep voice cutting through the stunned silence. "It looks like I made it just in time." A collective gasp swept the church. Chase stopped mid-step, frozen near the exit. Even Veronica's perfectly composed mask cracked. Emma's lips parted, confused. Her heart pounded in her ears. "Daughter?" The man's eyes locked onto hers, icy blue, startlingly familiar. "My name is Richard Sterling," he continued as he reached the front of the church. "And I've been looking for Emma for 25 years. It was like the air had been sucked out of the cathedral. Richard Sterling. The Richard Sterling. Tech mogul. Founder of Sterling Innovations. A man whose net worth had been the subject of entire Forbes cover stories. The kind of billionaire who didn't attend weddings, he built the software that ran them." Emma staggered back a step. I don't understand." "I didn't expect it to happen like this," he said gently, eyes softening. "But when my investigators told me they'd finally located you, and that you were getting married today, I got on a jet from Tokyo. I couldn't let another moment pass." "Wait," she whispered, her voice barely holding together. "You're saying, you're my?" "Yes," Richard nodded. "Your mother and I, we lost each other a long time ago. She left when you were still a baby. I've spent over 2 decades trying to find you." Emma swayed on her heels. Her mother, who was now gripping the end of a pew like she might collapse, let out a sound, half sob, half disbelief. From behind them, Chase muttered under his breath, "What the hell?" Richard turned then, eyes narrowing as he looked at the man who had just humiliated his daughter. "You must be the groom," he said, his tone now laced with steel. "The one who decided she wasn't good enough." Chase stiffened. I didn't know she was your daughter." "No," Richard cut him off, sharp and unforgiving. "You didn't know her worth. And now, you don't get to rewrite the story." He turned back to Emma, ignoring the stunned crowd, the flash of cell phones already recording, the church planner whispering frantically into her headset. "I know this is overwhelming," Richard said. "And I have no right to expect anything. But I've missed every birthday, every milestone. If there's even the smallest chance to be in your life, I'll take it. If you'll let me." Emma looked at the man she never knew she'd lost, and realized this wedding wasn't the end of something. It was the beginning of everything. The church emptied fast, too fast. Guests who had come for champagne and romance were now rushing for the exits, whispering like they'd stumbled into a soap opera. But Emma couldn't move. Her wedding dress clung to her skin like a costume that no longer fit. Her entire life, everything she thought she knew, was shifting beneath her heels. Richard Sterling turned to her mother, Diane, who stood pale and shaking beside the last row of pews. "You disappeared," he said softly. 25 years, 2 months, and 17 days ago. I never stopped looking. Diane's voice cracked. "You were building empires, Richard. You missed her first steps, her first words. You missed everything." "I was trying to build something for us," he said, his voice now thick with regret. "But it cost me everything that mattered." Emma stood between them, feeling like a child again, confused, unmoored. "Mom," she asked, "did you know? Did you really hide all of this from me?" Diane wiped at her tears. "I was scared. He threatened full custody during one of our worst fights. I didn't trust the system. I didn't trust him to put you above his company." "I never would have taken her away from you," Richard replied, pain radiating through every word. "No," Diane whispered. "But you were already gone, even when you were home." Emma swallowed hard. She couldn't deny it stung, knowing her entire childhood had been shaped not just by love, but by fear. Not just by absence, but by secrets. And then, from the side aisle, came an unwelcome voice. "Emma, maybe we should talk. Privately." Chase had returned. Still in his tux, though now slightly rumpled. His eyes darted between her and Richard like a man trying to calculate his odds. She stared at him. "You want to talk? Now? After what you just did to me?" "I messed up," he admitted, hands raised in mock surrender. "I panicked. Cold feet. Pre-wedding jitters. That's all it was." "No," Richard said coolly, stepping between them. "That wasn't panic. That was character." Chase's jaw clenched. "Look, I didn't know who she was. If I'd known—" "If you'd known she was my daughter," Richard interrupted, "you would have stayed. Pretended to love her a little longer. Married her for her last name, not for her heart." Emma's breath hitched. The truth was out, raw and sharp. Chase hadn't rejected her because of what she lacked. He'd rejected her because she didn't come with a price tag, until now. Chase's smile faltered. "Emma, please. Just 5 minutes. We can fix this." "No," she said, louder than she expected. "You made your choice the moment you turned your back on me. You don't get to crawl back just because my last name changed." She turned to Richard. "I don't know what happens next. But I know who's not coming with me." For the first time that day, she felt steady on her feet. Because lies had built the first version of her life. Now, she was ready to live one rooted in truth. 2 weeks passed, but the fallout from the ruined wedding lingered like smoke after a fire. Emma had tried to return to normal, teaching sight words, leading finger paint projects, pretending the tabloids parked outside her apartment weren't real. But Richard hadn't disappeared. He'd stayed in New York, gently persistent, showing up not with wealth, but with time. With patience. With stories of her as a baby, photos, notes he'd saved, birthday presents never delivered. And then, everything shifted again. Zoe, Emma's best friend and unspoken bodyguard since the wedding, showed up at her door one night with eyes wide and phone in hand. "You need to see this," she said. What followed felt like something out of a spy thriller. A photo, 3 years old, from a charity golf tournament. Chase Dalton laughing in the background. And standing next to him? Victor Langston. Richard's trusted protege. His presumed heir. The man who had stood silently at Emma's second wedding before it was cancelled. "That's weird," Emma said, frowning. Zoe nodded grimly. It gets worse. She pulled up a business panel, Chase and Victor seated side by side. Then came the financial documents. Chase's struggling development firm had been propped up by silent investors tied to Langston's VC network. Emma's stomach turned. You're saying Chase didn't just use me? He was planted? Zoe nodded. He was recruited. They knew you existed before you knew yourself. It hit Emma like a slap. Her entire relationship, 2 years of memories, kisses, holidays, had been a long con. Not just for love, but for leverage. Chase had been hired by Victor to keep her disconnected from her past. From her father. From everything she was owed. She stormed into Richard's penthouse the next morning, shaking with betrayal and fury. Did you know, she demanded, tossing Zoe's phone on the marble table, that your golden boy's been playing puppet master this whole time? Richard's face went pale as he scanned the images. No. I didn't. But it explains everything. He looked broken. Not just as a father, but as a man who had been blindsided from within. Victor's been threatened since the moment you entered the picture, he said, his voice low. You see, Emma, I never formally changed my will. He thought he was next in line. But if the world knew you existed, he loses everything, she finished, whispering. Richard nodded. And if you never knew who you were, if Chase kept you small, distracted, you'd never have claimed your place. Emma leaned back, letting the weight of the revelation crush her for a moment. Everything I thought was real was fake, she said. The relationship, the compliments, the proposal. No, Richard said. One thing was real, you. That's what scared them most. In that moment, Emma understood. She wasn't just a pawn in someone else's game. She was the queen they had tried to keep off the board. And now? She was done playing defense. Emma had never been one for revenge. She believed in kindness, in second chances, in giving people the benefit of the doubt. But after discovering that her entire relationship had been a lie, scripted, financed, and directed by Victor Langston with Chase Dalton as the lead actor, something inside her changed. She didn't want revenge. She wanted exposure. So when Richard sat her down over tea in his penthouse and said, we could confront them, but if you really want to dismantle their plans, we need to be strategic, she leaned in. What are you thinking? She asked. A second wedding, he said calmly. But this time, the ambush is ours. Emma blinked. You want me to fake reconcile with Chase? Richard nodded. Lure him and Victor into a sense of victory. Let them think their manipulation worked. Then we pull the rug out, in front of witnesses who matter. Board members. Investors. Journalists. Legal advisors. Emma thought about it. The dress. The walk down the aisle. The sting of that first betrayal. The smirk on Veronica Dalton's face. Chase's back turning as he labeled her too poor. Now, they were all clawing to get back in, because suddenly she had something they wanted. Power. Okay, she said slowly. Let's do it. Within days, the plan was in motion. Eleanor, Richard's longtime chief of staff and low-key operations genius, handled logistics like a general. A rooftop venue at the Sterling Hotel was secured. Invitations were sent. Press was subtly tipped off. And Emma? She played her part to perfection. She answered Chase's texts with just enough hesitation. Took his calls. Met him for coffee, letting him believe his persistence was wearing her down. I don't know if I can trust you again, she'd say, voice trembling. I'll prove I've changed, he'd insist, with all the practiced sincerity of a man who'd rehearsed the lines. When he suggested eloping to avoid more public drama, she paused dramatically and replied, no. If we're doing this, we're doing it right. with everyone watching. And that's when he sealed his own fate. He agreed. Victor, meanwhile, grew bolder. He cornered Emma one afternoon under the guise of rebuilding family harmony and offered her a discreet inheritance agreement, one that conveniently waived any voting power or decision-making authority in Montgomery Enterprises. Emma signed nothing. Instead, she brought the draft to Richard, who barely blinked. "They're getting sloppy," he said. "Desperation makes people stupid." The week before the ceremony, the entire operation tightened. Richard's legal team gathered documentation. The PR division prepped responses. Eleanor ensured the guest list was stacked with exactly the right witnesses. And Emma? She stood before a mirror in a designer gown, not the discounted lace of her first wedding, but a sharp, elegant silhouette that screamed confidence. Layla zipped her up and whispered, "You ready?" Emma looked at herself. No longer a woman hoping to belong. Now a woman who knew her worth. "Oh," she said, smiling. "I've never been more ready." Because this time, the aisle wasn't leading her to heartbreak. It was leading her to justice. The rooftop garden was soaked in golden hour light, a picture-perfect Manhattan evening. White flowers spilled over glass railings, violins played softly, and guests whispered over champagne flutes, too polite to ask why the bride looked so composed for someone who had once been left at the altar. Emma walked down the aisle in silence, her arm hooked through Richard's, her steps calm, her expression unreadable. No one dared breathe too loudly. Chase Dalton stood waiting, polished as ever in a custom tux. But there was a twitch at the corner of his mouth, a flicker in his eyes. He didn't know why he was sweating. Not yet. Beside him stood Victor Langston, playing the part of mentor, supporter, proud insider. He adjusted his cufflinks and whispered something to Chase as Emma approached. The ceremony began like any other. "Dearly beloved." But then, as the officiant reached the familiar line, "If anyone here objects to this union," Emma raised a single hand. "Actually," she said, her voice clear and steady. "I do." A stunned silence fell over the rooftop. Chase turned, eyes wide. "Emma, what?" She stepped forward and turned to the crowd. "Thank you all for being here. Especially those of you who witnessed what happened at my first wedding. I'm sure you're wondering why I would ever give Chase a second chance. Let me explain." At that moment, the string quartet stopped. The lights dimmed slightly, and a hidden projector clicked to life against the white wall behind the altar. What followed was nothing short of cinematic justice. First, email chains, dated, time-stamped, between Victor and Chase. Cold, calculated messages referencing the target, discussing timelines for deep integration, and even negotiating payment schedules. Then, surveillance photos, Emma teaching at school, walking home, having coffee with friends, captured from afar, catalogued with notes. She had been watched. For years. The crowd gasped. Next came the draft of a secret postnuptial agreement, a document designed to transfer control of any future inheritance from Emma to Chase in the event of incapacitation, death, or long-term travel. Richard's voice rang out from the front row. "Tell me, Chase, exactly when were you planning to have her sign that? Before the honeymoon?" Victor's mask slipped for the first time. He stepped forward. "This is outrageous. These documents could have been faked." "Oh, they weren't," Richard replied. "Our cybersecurity firm traced the metadata to your company servers." Chase looked ready to bolt. "Don't bother," Emma said sharply. "Security's already positioned at every exit. You're not leaving until everyone here hears the truth." Margaret Dalton, Chase's mother, rose, face pale. "Chase, what is this? What have you done?" Emma turned to Chase, meeting him eye to eye. "You didn't fall in love with me. You followed a script. You were paid to keep me small, to keep me unaware of who I am. You humiliated me the first time. This time, I came prepared. The rooftop buzzed with whispers and cell phones raised in disbelief. Victor, flushed and furious, hissed, "You've ruined everything." "No," Emma said, voice firm. "I rewrote everything. And this time, everyone would see it." Security didn't rush. They didn't have to. As Victor Langston lunged toward the projector, 2 guards stepped out from behind a floral display and blocked him without a word. Another pair calmly intercepted Chase, who had started backing toward the side stairwell like a magician caught mid-trick. "Don't touch me," Victor barked, eyes darting to Richard. "This is a mistake." "The only mistake," Richard said, rising slowly, "was thinking my daughter wouldn't figure you out." Victor's composure cracked. He looked around the room, at the guests in suits and gowns, at the board members whispering behind their hands, at the journalists he hadn't realized were invited until now. He saw it in their eyes, this wasn't salvageable. "You'll regret this," he snapped. "No," Emma replied coolly, stepping forward. "I regret trusting the wrong people. But I won't regret making sure no one else ever does." Chase turned one last time to Emma as security reached for his arm. "Emma, please," he said, his voice trembling, no longer confident, no longer charming, just pathetic. "You don't understand. I did love you." She tilted her head, studying him for the last time. "No. You loved the version of me that didn't know her worth." He looked like he might say more, but the guards guided him away before he could. Victor followed, flanked on both sides, seething with impotent rage. As they disappeared into the elevator, the tension on the rooftop broke like a thunderclap. Guests burst into hushed chatter. Some clapped. Some looked stunned. A few even cried. But Emma? She just stood there, alone at the altar, her wedding dress untouched, unwilted, radiant. This wasn't her wedding. It was her reckoning. She turned to face the crowd, shoulders back, spine straight, eyes clear. "This day was never about marriage," she said. "It was about reclaiming my name, my voice, my future." The applause that followed wasn't polite. It was thunderous. Layla rushed forward, throwing her arms around Emma. "You didn't just survive, girl. You burned the whole thing down." Richard joined them moments later, pride softening the lines on his face. "You didn't need me to fight your battle." Emma smiled, tears finally rising, but this time, not from pain. "No," she said. "But it means everything to have someone beside me while I win it." She didn't walk back down the aisle that day in the arms of a husband. She didn't toss a bouquet or cut a cake. There was no honeymoon to chase, no future to script with a man who saw her as a means to an end. Instead, she walked off that rooftop with her head high, her father at her side, and her story finally her own. Not as a bride, but as a warrior. 6 months later, the ballroom of the newly renamed Sterling Education Foundation gleamed with soft light, warm laughter, and the hum of something rare in high society, genuine purpose. At the center of it all stood Emma Brooks, no longer just a kindergarten teacher, no longer a billionaire's hidden daughter, no longer the girl who had been left at the altar. Tonight, she was something far greater. The founder of an initiative that would change thousands of lives. The Sterling Foundation for Early Learning launched with a mission rooted not in privilege, but in empathy, providing scholarships, resources, and mental health programs for underserved children and educators. It was Emma's vision, powered by Richard's support and carried by a team of teachers, social workers, and dreamers just like her. She stood at the podium, the room falling silent as she began to speak. "I used to believe being wealthy meant you didn't understand struggle," she said. "But I've learned that wealth isn't always what's in your bank account. It's in your values. It's in how you lift others. And tonight, we're choosing to invest in what truly matters, children, teachers, and the communities that shape us all." The crowd erupted in applause. In the front row, Richard Sterling sat with misted eyes, looking prouder than he had the day he built his first company. His health, though not perfect, had stabilized under an aggressive new treatment protocol, something his wealth could finally buy, but his daughter's presence had given him the will to pursue. After her speech, Emma walked off stage and joined him. "You did good, kid," he said quietly. She smiled, slipping her hand into his. "We did good." They watched the room buzz, educators mingling with philanthropists, policymakers chatting with former students, and press whispering not about drama but about impact. Across the room, Emma caught sight of someone she hadn't seen in months, Chase. Not in a tux. Not with a drink. But quietly working the catering team, clearing empty glasses with the stiff grace of someone who had fallen hard and far. He glanced up, spotted her, and looked away. Emma felt nothing. No anger. No satisfaction. Just distance. And peace. Later that night, she sat with her mother and Layla on the terrace, wrapped in soft blankets, sipping tea. Manhattan glittered around them. 6 months ago, Layla said, you were heartbroken, broke, and humiliated in front of half of New York. Emma laughed. Don't forget live-streamed across social media. And now look at you, Diane added, squeezing her hand. You turned betrayal into something beautiful. Emma looked up at the stars. For once, they didn't feel so far away. I didn't just survive it, she whispered. I transformed because of it. And in that moment, surrounded by the people who never measured her by status, title, or wealth, she finally understood. She hadn't been rescued by a billionaire. She'd been discovered by her truth. And this was only the beginning. It was late, long after the gala had ended, long after the last thank you had been spoken and the last light had dimmed, when Emma stood alone in the quiet of her apartment. She looked around the small space that had once been her whole world, the thrifted bookshelf, the chipped coffee table, the framed crayon drawings from her students still proudly taped to the fridge. This place hadn't changed much. But she had. She sank onto her worn-out couch, curled her legs beneath her, and let herself feel it all, everything that had led to this moment. The heartbreak. The humiliation. The staggering betrayal. The truth. The rediscovery. The power reclaimed. In the hush of the night, her father's words echoed from months earlier, they judged you for what you lacked in your wallet. But they couldn't see what you had in your heart. She closed her eyes and breathed it in. They had called her poor. Too poor to marry. Too poor to belong. Too poor to matter. But they were wrong. She had never been poor. Not in spirit. She had stood alone at the altar and refused to break. Not in love. She had been surrounded by friends who never left, by children who looked up at her like she hung the moon. Not in purpose. She had turned every piece of pain into a platform for change. No designer label, no luxury zip code, no last name, no matter how wealthy, could have given her more than what she already carried inside. Compassion. Conviction. Courage. That was the true inheritance. Not the stocks or the jet or the penthouse. But the fire to rise, to rebuild, and to lead with heart in a world obsessed with status. A soft knock pulled her out of thought. It was Richard. I was just heading out, he said, gently holding a coat in his hand. Didn't want to leave without saying goodnight. She smiled. You know, this place may be small, but it's still the coziest corner of my life. He looked around and nodded. You built this before anyone ever knew your name. That's why I'm proud. Because nothing about you changed, you just gave the world a clearer view. They stood in silence for a moment, watching the skyline beyond the window. Emma, he said before leaving, if you ever forget who you are, just remember what you've done. Legacies aren't built in boardrooms. They're built in moments like this. After he left, Emma turned back toward the city lights, and for the first time in a long time, she felt entirely full. She didn't need a ring. She didn't need revenge. She didn't need to prove anything to anyone, because everything she'd once been ashamed of had become the foundation of her strength. "I was never poor," she whispered. And she wasn't. She was wealthier than anyone who had ever underestimated her, because she had herself. And that was priceless.